The afternoon sun hung bright in the clear blue sky as Andre walked through the winding streets of Pine Hollow Estates. The 12-year-old boy adjusted his backpack, careful not to disturb the camera his mom had given him for his birthday last month. His science teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, had assigned a project on local birds, and Andre couldn't wait to capture some good shots. Just 30 minutes, his mom had told him before dropping him off at the neighborhood entrance. "I have to finish up some work calls. Then I'll come pick you up at the big oak tree by the park." Andre nodded, watching as her car disappeared around the corner. He knew Pine Hollow Estates had the best variety of birds in town. His mom had told him so. Plus, the neighborhood had beautiful landscaping, with perfectly maintained gardens and towering trees that served as perfect homes for the local wildlife. Taking out his camera, Andre checked the settings just like his uncle had taught him. Photography had quickly become his favorite hobby, a way to see the world differently. He spotted a blue jay perched on a nearby fence and carefully raised his camera, holding his breath as he focused. Click. He checked the image on the small screen and smiled. The blue jay was perfectly framed against the white fence, its vibrant feathers captured in stunning detail. 1 down, 9 more to go for his project. As Andre continued down the sidewalk, he didn't notice the woman watching him from behind her living room curtains. Nancy Winters had lived in Pine Hollow Estates for 15 years and prided herself on knowing everyone who belonged in the neighborhood. And this boy, she was certain, did not belong. Nancy's eyes narrowed as she watched Andre stop to photograph a bird bath in someone's front yard. To her, it looked like he was taking pictures of the house itself. She'd read on the neighborhood Facebook group about burglars casing houses before breaking in. Wasn't taking pictures one of the warning signs mentioned in that post? "Harold," she called to her husband, who was dozing in his recliner. "There's a boy outside taking pictures of the neighbors' houses." Harold barely stirred. "Probably just some kid with a camera, Nance." "You're not taking this seriously," Nancy said, her voice rising. "We've had those break-ins over in Meadow Ridge. This could be related." She watched as Andre moved on to another yard, crouching down to get a better angle of a cardinal in a flowering bush. That was the Thompsons' house, and they were away on vacation. Her heart raced. What if this was the beginning of a crime? Without further hesitation, Nancy picked up her phone and dialed 911. "Pine Hollow Police Department, what's your emergency?" The dispatcher answered. "Yes, hello. I need to report a suspicious person in our neighborhood," Nancy said, keeping her eyes fixed on Andre. "There's a young boy I've never seen before taking pictures of houses. The Thompsons are away and he's photographing their property right now. Can you describe this person?" "He's a black boy, maybe 11 or 12, wearing a green t-shirt and jeans. He has a backpack and a camera. He's been walking up and down Maple Avenue for the past 20 minutes taking pictures of different houses. Has he attempted to enter any properties or spoken with anyone?" "No, but he's clearly casing the neighborhood. We've had break-ins nearby and I'm concerned for our safety. The HOA has strict rules about soliciting and trespassing. He definitely doesn't live here." The dispatcher assured Nancy that officers would be sent to check on the situation. Nancy hung up, feeling a mixture of pride and nervousness. She was doing her civic duty, protecting her community. If the boy was innocent, no harm done. Better safe than sorry. Outside, Andre remained blissfully unaware of the drama unfolding. He'd found a spot near a small pond where several birds were gathering. Setting his backpack down on a bench, he took out his notebook and jotted down the species he'd already photographed. Blue jay, cardinal, robin, and a small brown bird he couldn't identify yet. His science teacher would be impressed. Andre had already decided he would arrange the photos by size or maybe by color for his presentation. He imagined standing in front of the class, explaining the different species and their habitats. Maybe this project would even help him win the science fair next month. The sound of a car approaching made Andre look up. A police cruiser rolled slowly down the street, and to his surprise, it stopped right beside him. Andre's stomach tightened as 2 officers stepped out. "Afternoon," said the taller officer, a man with a buzz cut and sunglasses. His name tag read Officer Daniels. "Mind if we ask what you're doing here?" Andre swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how dry his mouth felt. "I'm just taking pictures of birds for my science project, sir." The second officer, a woman with her hair pulled back in a tight bun, glanced at his camera. "Officer Martinez," she introduced herself. "Can I see what kind of pictures you've been taking?" Andre nodded. hands slightly trembling as he turned on the camera's display and showed them the bird photos he'd taken. My teacher wants us to identify 10 different local birds. I've got 4 so far. Officer Daniels looked at the images, then at Andre. Do you live in this neighborhood, son? No, sir. But my mom. Before Andre could finish, Nancy Winters appeared, marching across her front lawn toward them. She wore khaki capri pants and a polo shirt with the Pine Hollow Estates logo embroidered on the chest. Officers, thank you for responding so quickly, she said, casting a suspicious glance at Andre. I'm Nancy Winters, HOA board member. I called because this young man has been wandering around taking pictures of houses for almost half an hour now. Andre's eyes widened. I wasn't taking pictures of houses. I was photographing birds for school. Nancy crossed her arms. I saw you photographing the Thompsons' property, and they're out of town. How would you explain that? There was a cardinal in their bush, Andre said, his voice getting smaller. I'm doing a project on birds. Officer Martinez scrolled through more of Andre's photos, confirming they were indeed all of birds. Ma'am, his camera only contains wildlife shots. Nancy wasn't convinced. Well, he still doesn't belong here. This is a private community. We have rules against trespassing and solicitation. I'm not trespassing, Andre protested, feeling tears threatening to form. He blinked them back, not wanting to cry in front of the officers. My mom said it was okay for me to be here. She's coming to pick me up soon. And who exactly is your mother? Nancy asked, her tone making it clear she didn't believe him. Dr. Johnson. She works at Pine Hollow Medical Center. Nancy's eyebrows shot up. Dr. Johnson? I don't recall any Dr. Johnson living in our community, and I know all the residents. Officer Daniels turned to Andre. Can you call your mom so we can verify your story? Andre nodded, reaching into his pocket for his phone. His hands were shaking so much he nearly dropped it. He found his mom's number and pressed call, praying she would answer right away. Please pick up. Please pick up, he whispered as the phone rang. Nancy watched with narrowed eyes, certain she was about to catch the boy in a lie. A small crowd of neighbors had begun to gather at a distance, curious about the police presence on their quiet street. Hey, sweetie, I'm just finishing up. Are you ready to be picked up? His mother's voice finally came through the speaker. Mom, Andre said, his voice cracking slightly. There are police officers here. Someone called them because I was taking pictures. Can you come right now? There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. When his mother spoke again, her voice was calm but had an edge to it that Andre recognized. The tone she used when she was angry but trying not to show it. Put one of the officers on the phone. Please. Andre handed his phone to Officer Daniels, who stepped a few paces away to speak with Dr. Johnson. Nancy continued to stare at Andre, as if he were a puzzle she couldn't quite figure out. You should have asked permission before entering a private neighborhood, she told him. There are rules for a reason. Andre looked down at his sneakers. I didn't know I needed permission to take pictures of birds. Officer Daniels returned and handed the phone back to Andre. Your mother is on her way. She should be here in about 10 minutes. Nancy's face tightened. Well, I still think we should wait and confirm she is who she says she is. Anyone can claim to be a doctor over the phone. A younger couple had wandered over from across the street. The woman holding a baby on her hip asked, What's going on? Is everything okay? Everything's fine, Officer Martinez assured her. Just a misunderstanding we're sorting out. As they waited for Dr. Johnson to arrive, Andre sat on the bench beside his backpack, feeling every pair of eyes on him. He wished he could disappear or that his mom would drive up right this second. The excitement he'd felt about his project had vanished, replaced by a knot of anxiety in his stomach. Nancy remained standing nearby, occasionally whispering to another neighbor who had joined the small gathering. The officers stayed with Andre, Officer Martinez asking him about his science project in what seemed like an attempt to ease the tension. Andre answered her questions politely, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept looking down the street, waiting for his mother's car to appear and end this nightmare. What was supposed to be a simple afternoon of photography had turned into something else entirely, and Andre couldn't help wondering if this would have happened if he looked different, or if his skin was a different color. It wasn't the first time he'd felt out of place, but it was certainly the most public and humiliating experience yet. All he could do now was wait for his mom and hope that whatever happened next would prove to Nancy Winters and everyone watching that he had every right to be there. taking pictures of birds in the afternoon sun. The minutes crawled by as Andre sat on the bench, his camera clutched tightly in his hands. More neighbors had gathered, forming a loose semicircle around the scene. Some pretended to check their mail or water their flowers, while others made no attempt to hide their curiosity. Andre could hear snippets of their whispered conversations. "Who is that boy? Nancy's always overreacting. Better safe than sorry these days." Officer Martinez stood near Andre while Officer Daniels spoke with Nancy a few feet away. The woman was gesturing emphatically, pointing occasionally in Andre's direction. "I'm just saying," Nancy's voice carried over. "We have procedures for visitors in Pine Hollow. There's a guest registry at the front gate for a reason." "Ma'am, he's a child," Officer Daniels replied, his voice measured. "And his mother is on her way to clear this up." Nancy huffed. "Anyone can claim to be someone's mother. I've been on the HOA board for 6 years, and I've never heard of a Dr. Johnson in our community." A silver-haired man in his 70s approached the bench where Andre sat. He leaned on a wooden cane and offered Andre a kind smile. "Don't mind Nancy," he said quietly. "She calls the police if a leaf blows onto her property the wrong way." Despite his anxiety, Andre couldn't help but return a small smile. The old man winked at him before turning to Nancy. "For heaven's sake, Nancy," he called out, his voice stronger than Andre expected. "The boy's taking pictures of birds. My granddaughter did the same project last year." Nancy's face tightened. "This isn't about the pictures, Mr. Chen. It's about unauthorized access to our community. You remember the break-ins over in Meadow Ridge?" Mr. Chen rolled his eyes. "That was 2 teenagers who lived in Meadow Ridge. Not exactly criminal masterminds." As they argued, Andre noticed a young woman with curly hair filming the scene with her phone. She caught his eye and gave him a reassuring nod. Andre wasn't sure if that made him feel better or worse. Officer Martinez checked her watch. "Your mom should be here any minute," she told Andre. "Do you want some water while you wait?" Andre shook his head. His throat felt too tight to drink anything. All he wanted was for this nightmare to end. Nancy had moved closer again, her arms crossed. "I'd like to see some identification," she said to Andre. "He's 12, Officer Martinez replied before Andre could speak. "He's not required to carry ID." "Well then, how do we know who he really is?" Nancy persisted. "As I've explained," Officer Daniels said, rejoining them, "we're waiting for his mother to arrive. She's confirmed she gave him permission to be here." "Permission from whom?" Nancy asked. "I'm on the HOA board, and nobody asked us for permission to let some random child wander around taking pictures of our homes." Andre felt his face grow hot. "I told you I was taking pictures of birds, not houses. Look." He held up his camera, scrolling through the photos again. "See? Birds?" Nancy barely glanced at the screen. "You could have deleted the other pictures already." The young woman with the curly hair stepped forward. "Are you serious right now?" "He's a kid doing a school project." "And who are you?" Nancy demanded. "Lisa Thompson," the woman replied. "My parents live in that house he was supposedly casing." She made air quotes around the word casing. Nancy's eyes widened. "The Thompsons are in Florida." "Yes," Lisa agreed. "And I'm house-sitting for them. Which you would know if you'd bothered to ask before calling the police on a child." More neighbors had joined the growing crowd, at least 15 people now watching the drama unfold. Andre felt like he was on display at a zoo, with everyone staring and commenting as if he couldn't hear them. "Look," Lisa continued, holding up her phone. "I've been recording this whole interaction. And I'm not the only one." "Do you really want to be the next viral Karen video?" Nancy's face flushed. "How dare you?" "I am looking out for this community's safety." "That's hardly the same as those internet people. Those internet people who call the police on black people for existing in public spaces," Lisa challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, that's exactly what this looks like." The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Andre wished he could disappear. He'd never felt so small, so scrutinized, so wrong, even though he knew he hadn't done anything. Officer Daniels stepped between Nancy and Lisa. "Let's all take a breath here. We're just waiting for the boy's mother, and then everyone can go about their day." "I have a name," Andre said quietly. "It's Andre," Officer Martinez nodded. "You're right, Andre, I apologize." A white SUV turned onto the street, and Andre felt a surge of hope. But it wasn't his mother's car. Instead, a man in a pressed golf shirt and khaki shorts emerged, looking confused at the gathering. What's going on? He asked no one in particular. HOA business, Ted, Nancy called out. Nothing to worry about. Ted joined the crowd anyway, raising his eyebrows when Mr. Chen filled him in on what had happened. You called the cops on a kid taking bird pictures? Ted asked Nancy incredulously. Seriously? It's about unauthorized access, Nancy insisted, though her voice had lost some of its earlier conviction. Ted shook his head. This is exactly why people think our HOA is out of control. As the neighbors continued to debate, Andre checked his phone. His mom had texted, almost there, 2 minutes. He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Officer Daniels was asking the crowd to disperse when a sleek black car turned onto the street, moving faster than the usual neighborhood pace. It pulled up directly beside the police cruiser, and Andre felt a rush of relief so powerful he nearly cried. Dr. Johnson stepped out of the car, her white lab coat still on over her dress clothes. Her eyes quickly found Andre and she moved toward him with purpose. Andre, are you okay? She asked, her voice steady but with an undercurrent of anger that wasn't directed at him. Andre nodded, standing up to meet her. I'm fine, Mom. Dr. Johnson placed a hand on his shoulder before turning to face the officers. She stood tall, her presence commanding instant attention from everyone present. I'd like to know, she said, her words precise and measured, why my son was detained by police while working on his science project. Officer Martinez stepped forward. Ma'am, we received a call about suspicious activity. Taking photographs of birds is suspicious activity. Dr. Johnson interrupted. Nancy pushed through the small crowd. Excuse me, I'm the one who called. Nancy Winters, HOA board member. She extended her hand, which Dr. Johnson did not take. Your son was wandering around our private community taking pictures. We have strict rules about... I'm well aware of the rules, Ms. Winters, Dr. Johnson said coolly. What I'm not aware of is when photographing wildlife became a police matter. Nancy's chin lifted. He didn't have permission to be here. He had my permission, Dr. Johnson replied. And last I checked, that was sufficient. With all due respect, Nancy said in a tone that suggested no respect at all. You don't have the authority to grant access to our community. As an HOA board member, I know all our residents and you don't live here. A small, satisfied smile appeared on Dr. Johnson's face. Actually, I do. Nancy blinked in surprise. Since when? Since I purchased the Willow Creek property 3 months ago, Dr. Johnson said. You know, the big house on the corner with the fountain? Nancy's mouth opened, then closed again. The Montgomery house? But that was sold to a Dr. M. Johnson. The paperwork said, Dr. Maya Johnson, Dr. Johnson supplied. That would be me. A murmur ran through the crowd. Ted let out a low whistle. Mr. Chen chuckled and leaned on his cane with a look of pure delight on his face. Nancy's face had gone from red to pale in seconds. But you haven't been to any HOA meetings. I've been setting up my new department at the hospital, Dr. Johnson explained. I sent my regrets to the board secretary along with my dues and paperwork. Perhaps you should check your records more carefully before calling the police on community members. Officer Daniels cleared his throat. Ma'am, it appears this has been a misunderstanding. Has it? Dr. Johnson asked, her gaze still fixed on Nancy. Because from where I stand, my son was racially profiled while doing a school assignment in his own neighborhood. The word profiled hung in the air like a thunderclap. Several neighbors looked away uncomfortably. Nancy's face flushed again. That's not what happened, she protested weakly. I didn't know who he was. I was just following protocol. Would you have followed the same protocol if he'd been a white child? Dr. Johnson asked pointedly. Nancy opened her mouth to respond but seemed to think better of it. Lisa, still holding her phone, stepped forward. For what it's worth, I've got the whole thing recorded, including when she admitted she called because he was taking pictures of my parents' house while they're away. Dr. Johnson nodded. Thank you. I may want a copy of that. Officer Martinez spoke up. Dr. Johnson, is there anything else you need from us? We can file a report about this incident if you wish. I'll think about it, Dr. Johnson replied. She turned to Andre. Get your backpack, honey. We're going home. Andre grabbed his bag, relief washing over him. As he walked to his mother's car, he heard Nancy's strained voice behind him. Dr. Johnson, I hope you understand that as an HOA board member, I was just trying to protect our community. If I had known he was your son, Dr. Johnson turned back, her expression fierce. That's exactly the problem, Ms. Winters. My son shouldn't need to be my son to be treated with basic dignity and respect. The gathered neighbors murmured in agreement, many of them looking at Nancy with newfound disapproval. This conversation isn't over, Dr. Johnson added, but it will continue at the next HOA meeting. I believe that's next Tuesday at 7 p.m. I'll be there. She opened the car door for Andre, who climbed in gratefully. As they drove away, leaving Nancy standing speechless among her neighbors, Andre let out a long breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. I'm sorry that happened, Dr. Johnson said quietly. Are you really okay? Andre nodded, though his hands were still shaking slightly. Yeah, but Mom? Yes? What did you mean when you said the conversation would continue at the HOA meeting? Dr. Johnson glanced at him, a determined look in her eyes. It means, Andre, that what happened today isn't just going to be forgotten. Some things need to change in Pine Hollow Estates, and we're going to help change them. The video spread through Pine Hollow Estates like wildfire. By dinner time, nearly everyone in the community had seen Lisa Thompson's recording of Nancy Winters calling the police on Andre. Text messages and neighborhood group chats buzzed with opinions and gossip. A community that had once been relatively quiet was now divided into camps. Those who supported Nancy's caution, and those who were outraged by her actions. Andre sat at the kitchen island in their new home, picking at his plate of pasta. The house still felt unfamiliar, with moving boxes stacked in corners and empty walls waiting for pictures. His mother moved around the kitchen with practiced efficiency, despite the chaos of their recent move. You've barely touched your food, Dr. Johnson observed, pausing to place a gentle hand on Andre's shoulder. Andre shrugged. Not really hungry. Dr. Johnson pulled up a stool next to him. Want to talk about it? What's there to talk about? Andre mumbled. Some lady thought I was a criminal because I'm black. Not exactly breaking news. His mother sighed, her professional composure slipping just enough for Andre to see her own hurt and anger. You're right, and that's the problem. It shouldn't be normal. Andre pushed his plate away. What are you going to do at that HOA meeting anyway? Address it directly, Dr. Johnson replied. Sometimes the only way through something is straight through the middle. The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Dr. Johnson checked her phone, where the doorbell camera showed Lisa Thompson standing on their porch, holding what looked like a pie. It's the woman who recorded the video, Dr. Johnson said, heading toward the door. Andre followed, curious. His mother opened the door to reveal Lisa shifting nervously from one foot to the other. Hi, Dr. Johnson, Andre, Lisa said. I hope I'm not intruding. I just wanted to check on you both and, well, apologize for what happened in our neighborhood. Dr. Johnson's expression softened. You have nothing to apologize for. You were one of the few people who spoke up. Please come in. Lisa stepped inside, taking in the half-unpacked living room. I brought apple pie, my mom's recipe. Not that pie fixes everything, but pie never hurts, Dr. Johnson said with a small smile, accepting the dish. Thank you. They moved to the kitchen where Dr. Johnson made coffee while Andre cleared space at the island. An awkward silence hung in the air until Lisa cleared her throat. The video has over 2,000 views already, she said, mostly neighborhood residents sharing it with each other. I didn't post it publicly online or anything. Dr. Johnson nodded. I appreciate that. This isn't about public shaming. It's about our community confronting an uncomfortable truth. Lisa's phone pinged and she glanced at it. That's actually why I came by. There's a small group of residents who want to support you at the HOA meeting. We're meeting for coffee tomorrow to discuss it. Would you be interested in joining? Andre watched his mother consider this offer. She was always strategic, thinking 3 moves ahead. Who's involved? Dr. Johnson asked. Mr. Chen, the older gentleman who was there today. The Patels from Oak Street. The Rodriguez family from the East Entrance. About 10 others so far. Lisa hesitated. We think what happened to Andre represents a bigger problem in Pine Hollow. Dr. Johnson's eyebrows raised slightly. Which is? The HOA has been selective about how they enforce rules, Lisa explained. The Rodriguezes got fined 3 times last year for unapproved decorations during Dia de los Muertos. But the Millers' enormous Christmas display that violated the same rules got featured in the community newsletter. Andre felt a spark of interest for the first time since the incident. So this isn't just about me? No, Lisa confirmed. It's about making Pine Hollow truly welcoming for everyone. Your experience just brought it to a head. Dr. Johnson poured coffee for herself and Lisa. Text me the details for tomorrow. We'll be there. The next day, Andre found himself in the back room of a coffee shop just outside Pine Hollow Estates. The space was packed with neighbors, many of whom Andre recognized from the previous day's confrontation. Mr. Chen sat near the front, his cane propped against his chair. The Rodriguez family had brought their daughter, who looked about Andre's age. She gave him a shy wave, which he returned. "I never expected this many people," Dr. Johnson whispered to Andre as they found seats. Lisa stood up to address the group. "Thanks for coming, everyone. I think we all know why we're here. What happened to Andre yesterday was wrong, but it's also part of a pattern in our community." For the next hour, Andre listened as neighbors shared stories of their experiences in Pine Hollow. Mr. Rodriguez described the decoration finds. Mrs. Patel talked about being reported for cooking odors when making traditional Indian meals. Mr. Chen explained how his request for a wheelchair ramp modification had been delayed for months with unnecessary paperwork. Andre's mother took notes throughout, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Finally, she stood up. "I moved to Pine Hollow because it has good schools and is close to the hospital," she began. "I knew it wasn't the most diverse community, but I believed my family would be safe and welcome there. Yesterday proved I was wrong." The room fell silent. "But what I'm hearing today gives me hope," Dr. Johnson continued, "because you all care enough to show up. The HOA meeting is in 3 days. I believe we need to present a united front with specific requests for change." The discussion shifted to strategy. By the time the meeting ended, they had a plan. Andre felt something he hadn't expected, a sense of purpose rising from the ashes of his humiliation. On Tuesday evening, the Pine Hollow Estates Community Center was filled beyond capacity. The monthly HOA meeting rarely drew more than 20 residents, but tonight, at least 100 people crowded into the room. The HOA board members, including Nancy Winters, sat at a long table facing the audience. Nancy had not made any public statement since the incident. Her normally perfect appearance showed signs of strain, her hair less precisely styled, dark circles under her eyes poorly concealed by makeup. She avoided looking directly at Dr. Johnson and Andre, who sat in the front row. The HOA president, a balding man named Richard Glover, seemed bewildered by the turnout. He cleared his throat nervously as he called the meeting to order. "Good evening, everyone. I see we have quite a crowd tonight. Let's begin with the usual business, and then we'll move to the open forum." From the back of the room, Mr. Chen's voice rang out. "Point of order. Mr. President, given the circumstances, I move that we address the incident involving Dr. Johnson's son first." Before regular business, a chorus of "second" echoed through the room. Richard looked uncertainly at the other board members. Nancy stared straight ahead, her face rigid. "Very well," Richard conceded. "Dr. Maya Johnson has requested time to address the board. Dr. Johnson, you have the floor." Andre's mother rose gracefully and approached the podium. She wore a tailored navy suit, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She looked every bit the accomplished surgeon she was, commanding respect with her mere presence. "Thank you, Mr. Glover. For those who don't know me, I'm Dr. Maya Johnson. My son Andre and I moved to Pine Hollow 3 months ago." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the board members. "Last Friday, my 12-year-old son was photographing birds for a science project when a member of this board called the police on him, claiming he was engaging in suspicious activity." The room remained silent, tense with anticipation. "I'm not here to vilify Ms. Winters personally," Dr. Johnson continued, surprising everyone, "because this isn't just about one person's actions. It's about a culture that made those actions seem reasonable to her." Nancy's head snapped up, her eyes finally meeting Dr. Johnson's. Pine Hollow Estates presents itself as an exclusive community, but there's a fine line between exclusive and exclusionary. When my son, a child, can't take pictures of birds without being treated like a criminal, that line has been crossed. Dr. Johnson unfolded a piece of paper. "I've reviewed the HOA bylaws carefully. Nowhere do they state that residents or their guests need permission to take photographs of wildlife. Nowhere do they state that children must carry identification. What they do state in Section 4 is that all residents have the right to quiet enjoyment of community amenity." She looked directly at Nancy now. "Ms. Winters, by calling the police without first attempting to speak with my son, you violated that right. You made assumptions based on appearance rather than facts. Nancy finally spoke, her voice tight. I was following security protocols. Which protocols specifically? Dr. Johnson interrupted. Please cite the exact rule that instructs board members to call police on children taking photographs without first speaking to them. Nancy fell silent. That's what I thought, Dr. Johnson said. But tonight isn't about pointing fingers. It's about finding solutions. She turned to address the entire room. With the help of concerned neighbors, I've drafted a proposal for changes to our community guidelines. These include clear anti-discrimination policies, a more transparent process for rule enforcement, and mandatory cultural awareness training for board members. Lisa and several others began distributing printed copies of the proposal throughout the room. Additionally, Dr. Johnson continued, I'm formally announcing my candidacy for the HOA board at the next election. It's time this board reflected the diversity we want to see in our community. Applause erupted from many in the audience. Even some board members looked impressed or at least resigned to the inevitable changes coming their way. Richard Glover cleared his throat. Thank you, Dr. Johnson. We'll need time to review your proposal before taking any action. Of course, Dr. Johnson agreed. I'd like to request that the board commits to providing a formal response within 30 days. More applause followed, louder this time. As his mother returned to her seat, Andre felt a complicated mix of emotions. Pride in his mother's poise and strength, lingering hurt from the incident, but also a new feeling of something like hope. The room buzzed with energy as other residents stood to speak, most echoing support for Dr. Johnson's proposals. Nancy Winters remained silent, her gaze fixed on the table in front of her. For a brief moment her eyes met Andre's and he saw something unexpected there. Not anger or defiance, but uncertainty, maybe even shame. The meeting continued late into the evening, with more residents sharing their experiences than had ever spoken at an HOA meeting before. Something had broken open in Pine Hollow Estates, something that couldn't be closed again. As Andre watched the community, he was just beginning to call home transform before his eyes. He realized that sometimes it took a painful moment to create the possibility for real change. 2 weeks after the explosive HOA meeting, Pine Hollow Estates remained in a state of transformation. The community newsletter, typically filled with gardening tips and announcements about block parties, now featured a front-page article about the formation of a diversity and inclusion committee. Dr. Johnson had been unanimously voted as its chairperson, with Mr. Chen, Mrs. Rodriguez, and surprisingly Richard Glover, the HOA president, joining as founding members. Andre sat at his desk staring at his science project display. The bird photographs he'd taken that fateful day were mounted on a large poster board, surrounded by neat labels and information about each species. His teacher had given him an A+, with a note saying his research showed exceptional attention to detail. Andre ran his fingers over the glossy surface of the cardinal photo, the one he'd been taking when Nancy Winters first spotted him. A knock on his bedroom door pulled him from his thoughts. Come in, he called. His mother peered in. How's the project coming along? It's done, Andre said, gesturing to the display. Just thinking about stuff. Dr. Johnson entered the room and sat on the edge of his bed. What kind of stuff? Andre hesitated. I'm supposed to present this to the class tomorrow. Talk about my process and everything. And you're worried about mentioning what happened? He nodded. If I don't talk about it, it feels fake. But if I do, then you're the kid who had the cops called on him, his mother finished for him. Yeah. Andre sighed. Either way, that's all anyone will remember. Dr. Johnson studied him for a moment. You know, when I started my residency, I was the only black woman in my program. Every mistake I made, every success I had, it all felt like it wasn't just about me. Like I was somehow representing all black women everywhere. That's a lot of pressure, Andre said quietly. It is, she agreed. But over time, I realized something important. My story is mine to tell in my own way. Some days I might want to highlight the challenges. Other days I might just want to be Dr. Johnson's surgeon without qualifiers. Andre thought about this. So I get to decide how much of the story I tell? Exactly. You don't owe anyone your pain, but you also don't need to hide it. The choice is yours. Andre looked back at his project. I think I'll focus on the birds, but if someone asks about that day, I won't lie. His mother smiled. Sounds like a good plan. The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Dr. Johnson checked her phone. "That's odd," she said. "I'm not expecting anyone." They went downstairs together. Through the doorbell camera, they could see Nancy Winters standing on their porch, clutching what looked like a folder to her chest. She looked different. Her usual perfectly coiffed appearance replaced with a simpler style. Her face free of makeup. Andre and his mother exchanged surprised glances. "You don't have to talk to her," Dr. Johnson said quietly. Andre considered this. "It's okay. I want to hear what she has to say." Dr. Johnson nodded, a hint of pride in her eyes, and opened the door. Nancy startled slightly, as if she hadn't expected anyone to answer. "Dr. Johnson, Andre, I hope I'm not intruding." "That depends on why you're here," Dr. Johnson replied, her tone polite but reserved. Nancy swallowed hard. "I wanted to speak with both of you, in person. I've been trying to work up the courage for days." After a moment's hesitation, Dr. Johnson stepped aside. "Come in." They settled in the living room, which now looked more lived in than during Lisa's visit. Family photos adorned the walls, and a colorful throw blanket draped over the couch added warmth to the space. Nancy perched on the edge of an armchair, still clutching her folder. The silence stretched uncomfortably until she finally spoke. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since the meeting," she began. "Actually, since the day of the incident, I didn't sleep at all that night. Or much since, to be honest." She set the folder on the coffee table. "First, I want to say I'm truly sorry. To both of you, but especially to you, Andre. What I did was wrong, and no explanation I can offer changes that fact." Andre studied her face, looking for signs of insincerity but finding none. Nancy Winters looked genuinely distressed. "The thing is," Nancy continued, "I never thought of myself as racist. In my mind, I was just being cautious, following procedures. But these past 2 weeks have forced me to look at my actions differently." She opened the folder and pulled out a piece of paper. "This is my resignation from the HOA board. I've already submitted it officially, but I wanted you to have a copy." Dr. Johnson's eyebrows rose in surprise. "That wasn't necessary, Ms. Winters. The proposal wasn't about removing people. It was about changing the system." "I know," Nancy acknowledged, "but I need to step back and do some serious reflection. And frankly, the community deserves better leadership right now." She reached back into the folder. "There's something else. After your speech at the meeting, I couldn't stop thinking about what you said about protocols. So I went through all our HOA documents, and you were right. There's nothing about calling police without attempting to speak to residents first." She handed them several pages of highlighted documents. "But I also found these. Over the past 3 years, there have been 27 security complaints filed by board members. 21 of them involved people of color." Dr. Johnson took the papers, scanning them with growing interest.
"How did you access these records?"
"I've been board secretary for the past year," Nancy explained. "All complaints go through me for filing. I never noticed the pattern until now, or maybe I just didn't want to see it." Andre leaned forward. "So it wasn't just me?" Nancy shook her head, unable to meet his eyes.
"No, and that's why I'm here."
"I want to make this right, not just with you, but with everyone who's been affected." She pulled out one final document. "This is a proposal I've drafted for the new Diversity Committee. It's a resident-led review of all security incidents from the past 5 years, with recommendations for new protocols. I'd like your input before I submit it." Dr. Johnson examined the proposal, her expression thoughtful. "This is quite thorough." "I used to be a paralegal before I retired," Nancy said with a hint of her old confidence. "Research is my specialty." Andre watched this exchange with fascination. The woman sitting in their living room seemed nothing like the angry, accusatory figure from that day by the pond. "Why the change of heart?" he asked suddenly. "Is it just because my mom is on the board now?" Nancy looked startled by the direct question, then sighed. "That's fair. I'd wonder the same thing." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "The truth is, my daughter stopped speaking to me." This was clearly not what either Andre or Dr. Johnson had expected to hear. "Lisa sent her the video," Nancy continued. "My daughter lives in New York with her wife. She called me that night and said she was ashamed of me. Said she couldn't recognize the person in that video as her mother." Nancy's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "That hit me hard. But what really changed things was what she said next. She asked if I would have called the police if Andre had been white. The question hung in the air, the same one Dr. Johnson had asked that day. I wanted to say yes," Nancy admitted. that I would have done exactly the same thing regardless, but I realized I couldn't honestly say that. And once I acknowledged that truth to myself, I couldn't ignore what it meant. Dr. Johnson nodded slowly. Self-reflection is difficult. Not everyone is willing to do it. I'm trying, Nancy said simply. I can't change what happened, but I can help make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Andre had been quiet, processing everything. Finally, he spoke. I accept your apology, Ms. Winters. The simple statement seemed to release some of the tension in Nancy's shoulders. Thank you, Andre. That's more than I deserve. Dr. Johnson set down the proposal. I think this has potential. I'd like to discuss it further at the next committee meeting. Would you be willing to present it yourself? Nancy looked surprised. You'd want me there? This kind of change requires input from everyone, including those who recognize the need to do better, Dr. Johnson replied. Your perspective could be valuable. As Nancy prepared to leave, she paused at the door. There's a community picnic this Saturday. The Rodriguez family is organizing it. I understand if you're not comfortable attending, but it would mean a lot to have you there. After she left, Andre and his mother stood in silence for a moment. What do you think? Dr. Johnson finally asked. About Ms. Winters? Andre considered the question carefully. I think she's really trying. It doesn't fix everything, but it's a start. Dr. Johnson smiled. Wisdom beyond your years. So are we going to the picnic? Do you want to? Andre thought about it. Yeah, I think I do. Besides, I still haven't gotten pictures of a blue heron. Mr. Rodriguez said there's one that hangs out by the community lake. The Saturday picnic dawned bright and clear. Pine Hollow Estate's Central Park had been transformed with colorful decorations, food tables representing the diverse backgrounds of community members, and games for children of all ages. Andre's mother had contributed her famous Caribbean jerk chicken, a recipe passed down from his grandmother. As they approached, Andre spotted familiar faces. Mr. Chen playing chess with Richard Glover, Lisa chatting with the Patels, the Rodriguez family setting up a piñata for the younger kids, and at the welcome table, looking nervous but determined, sat Nancy Winters, handing out name tags. When she spotted Andre and Dr. Johnson, Nancy's expression shifted from anxiety to cautious hope. She held up 2 name tags with their names already printed on them. Dr. Johnson gave Andre's shoulder a gentle squeeze. Ready? Andre nodded, feeling a strange sense of peace. The wound of that day by the pond hadn't completely healed. Perhaps it never would, but something new was growing in its place. Not just for him, but for the entire community. Yeah, he said, reaching for his camera. I'm ready. 6 months had passed since the incident by the pond. The seasons had changed, summer fading to fall, then winter, and now the first hints of spring were emerging throughout Pine Hollow Estates. Cherry blossoms dotted the community's Central Park, and early flowers pushed through the soil in carefully maintained gardens. Andre adjusted the focus on his new camera, a birthday gift from his mother, as he photographed a nest of baby robins in the oak tree behind their house. His portfolio of bird photography had expanded considerably since that first science project. What had begun as a school assignment had evolved into a genuine passion. Got anything good? His mother asked, stepping onto the back patio with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. Andre scrolled through his recent shots and showed her the screen. The babies hatched last week. This is the first time they've all had their eyes open at once. Dr. Johnson smiled, handing him a mug. That's beautiful, Andre. You should submit it to the community showcase. The Pine Hollow Cultural Showcase was one of many new initiatives that had transformed the neighborhood over the past 6 months. It had been Dr. Johnson's idea, a quarterly event celebrating the diverse talents and backgrounds of community residents. The first showcase had featured everything from Mrs. Patel's traditional Indian dance performance to Mr. Rodriguez's cooking demonstration to Andre's bird photography. Maybe, Andre said, taking a sip of his hot chocolate. The deadline's next week, right? His mother nodded. Friday at 5. The committee meets that evening to select the featured pieces. The Diversity and Inclusion Committee had become one of the most active groups in Pine Hollow. Under Dr. Johnson's leadership, they had implemented a series of changes that rippled throughout the community. The security protocols had been completely rewritten, with clear guidelines emphasizing communication before escalation. The HOA board now reflected the growing diversity of the neighborhood. with Dr. Johnson serving as vice president alongside Richard Glover. "We should probably get going," Dr. Johnson said, checking her watch. "The dedication ceremony starts in 30 minutes. Andre carefully packed away his camera. Today was important, not just for Pine Hollow, but for him personally. It marked a kind of closure, a way of transforming a painful memory into something positive. They walked through the neighborhood, greeting neighbors along the way. Mr. Chen waved from his front porch, where he was teaching a group of children to play chess. The Rodriguez family's daughter, Camila, ran over to show Andre her own camera, a birthday present inspired by his growing collection of nature photographs. "Are you going to the pond?" she asked eagerly.
"My dad's already there setting up chairs." Andre nodded.
"We're heading there now. Want to walk with us?" As they approached the pond, the very spot where Nancy Winters had called the police on Andre 6 months earlier, they saw a small crowd gathering. A covered object stood near the water's edge, surrounded by newly planted flowers and benches. Richard Glover, still serving as HOA president, stood at a small podium. Nancy Winters stood nearby, looking nervous but determined. She had kept her word about stepping down from the board, but had remained active in community initiatives, particularly those focused on education and outreach. Andre and his mother found seats in the front row. The significance of the moment wasn't lost on either of them. This pond had been the site of humiliation and anger. Now it was being reclaimed as something entirely different. "Good afternoon, everyone," Richard began. "Thank you all for coming to this special dedication. 6 months ago, our community experienced a wake-up call. What happened here forced us to look honestly at ourselves and recognize that we weren't living up to our stated values of being a welcoming community for all." Heads nodded throughout the audience. Many residents had been part of the conversations and changes that followed that day. Today, we're not just dedicating a new community space. We're recommitting ourselves to being better neighbors and better people. Richard gestured to Nancy. "Ms. Winters would like to say a few words." Nancy approached the podium, her hands slightly trembling as she adjusted the microphone. She had changed over these months, not just in her appearance, which was less rigid and formal, but in her demeanor. The sharp edges had softened. "6 months ago, I made a terrible mistake right here," she began, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "I let fear and prejudice guide my actions, and I caused harm to a child and to our community." She looked directly at Andre. "That mistake changed me. It forced me to confront biases I didn't want to admit I had. The journey hasn't been easy, and it's far from over, but I'm grateful for it." Nancy turned to address the whole gathering. "This pond has always been one of Pine Hollow's natural treasures, but now it will also be a place of learning and reflection." She nodded to Richard, who pulled the covering from the mysterious object, revealing a beautiful stone marker with a plaque. The marker was surrounded by a newly installed educational display about local wildlife, featuring several of Andre's photographs. "The Pine Hollow Nature Walk and Bird Sanctuary," Nancy announced, "a place where everyone is welcome to learn, observe, and connect with nature." The plaque contained information about local birds and wildlife, with a smaller inscription at the bottom. "Dedicated to the journey of growth and understanding. May we always strive to see clearly." Dr. Johnson was invited to cut the ribbon stretched across the new stone pathway that now encircled the pond. As she did, applause broke out among the gathered neighbors. After the ceremony, people mingled and explored the new installation. Educational signs featuring Andre's photographs were positioned around the pond, each highlighting different species of birds and their habitats. A new covered pavilion offered seating and protection from the elements, making the space accessible year-round. Nancy approached Andre and his mother cautiously. "What do you think?" she asked. Andre studied the sanctuary. His photographs, once the cause of suspicion and fear, were now prominently displayed as educational tools. The pond where he'd been questioned by police was transformed into a place specifically designed to encourage exactly what he'd been doing that day, appreciating nature. "It's really good," he said sincerely. "Especially the bird blind." He pointed to a small wooden structure positioned to allow wildlife viewing without disturbing the animals. "That was actually my daughter's suggestion," Nancy said. "She's coming to visit next month. She's proud of the work being done here." Dr. Johnson smiled. "We all have a lot to be proud of. This represents real change, not just symbolic gestures." As they talked, Lisa Thompson approached with an elderly couple. Her parents, now back from Florida and fully caught up on the neighborhood transformation they'd missed. The famous photographer, Mr. Thompson exclaimed, shaking Andre's hand. Your picture of the heron is our favorite. We've got it framed in our living room. Andre grinned, still not entirely comfortable with his local celebrity status but appreciating the genuine admiration. His bird photography had become something of a phenomenon in Pine Hollow, with neighbors requesting prints in the community newsletter featuring his work regularly. Later, as the crowd began to disperse, Andre found himself alone by the water's edge. He took out his camera and captured the scene. The new sanctuary sign, the families exploring the nature walk, the community coming together in a space that had once represented division. His mother joined him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Penny, for your thoughts? Andre lowered his camera. I was just thinking about that day. If it hadn't happened, none of this would exist. Dr. Johnson considered this. That's often how change works. Something painful forces us to grow. Do you think it will last? Andre asked. All these changes? Some will. Some won't, his mother answered honestly. Real change isn't a single event. It's a process. There will be setbacks and new challenges, but what matters is that people are willing to do the work. They watched as Nancy Winters showed a group of children how to use the viewing scopes installed near the bird blind. Her transformation had been, perhaps, the most surprising outcome of all, from calling the police on a black child to becoming one of the community's most dedicated advocates for inclusion. People can change, Andre observed. Yes, they can, his mother agreed, when they choose to. As they walked home through Pine Hollow Estates, Andre thought about everything that had happened since that day by the pond. The community wasn't perfect, no place is. There were still occasional tensions, misunderstandings, and difficult conversations. But there was also a new willingness to listen, to learn, and to grow together. Andre stopped to photograph a butterfly that had landed on a flowering bush. Once, such an action had been seen as suspicious. Now neighbors waved and smiled as they passed by, some even pausing to see what had caught his photographic eye. 6 months ago, Andre had felt like an outsider in his own neighborhood. Today he felt something different. He belonged. Not because everyone looked like him or shared his background, but because the community had made room for difference. They had learned together that making space for everyone made the community stronger, not weaker. And that, Andre realized as he captured the butterfly taking flight, was the most important picture of all.